One Battle After Another is the new film from Paul Thomas Anderson, the same filmmaker that directed There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, Magnolia, and a ton. He's got a catalog of films under his belt, and he's considered by Quentin Tarantino to be his number one rival. And the thing about Paul Thomas Anderson movies is that with all the ones that I've seen, and I haven't seen them all yet, he takes you on a ride, and One Battle After Another is no different. So this movie was inspired by a 1990 book called Vineland, and I've never read the book before, but I did look into the book, and there are some things that inspired this story, but the characters are completely original from Paul Thomas Anderson, who's the writer, director, and producer of this movie. This is the type of movie that I think people that really love grimy, gritty types of films, suspense thrillers, and I guess that would be the, suspense action thriller. People that like those kinds of films, like Coen brother films, or movies from directors like Martin McDonagh, you're going to get what you want with this movie. It's a big movie. It's a whopping 2 hours and 50 minutes, and it is very, very good. So here's what I'm going to do. Look, the less you know about this movie, the better. So I'm going to keep things very, very vague, assuming you haven't seen this movie. So the film stars Leonardo DiCaprio, and he plays this sort of revolutionary street militant who works with this group of, I don't know if you call them vigilantes, sort of like an anti-fascist type of group. And the film starts out with sort of introducing what they do and how they got to where they got. And then it spins off into a story about him, his wife, and his family. So the film establishes what's going on and who the characters are. Then we have a time skip, and that's when the actual story begins. So it has like a prologue, before actually telling us the real meat of the story. As always, Leonardo DiCaprio is great in everything. I mean, everything he does, he's always great. He's been great for years and years and years. You've seen him play characters like this before. He comes off really likable, really on edge, because what ends up happening, and again, I'm not going to go into big spoilers. I'm not, because I don't want you to know much. The character he plays is oftentimes under the influence, and that ends up being a situation where he has to remember things and he can't. So following him, you have this sense of dread and this sense of paranoia that I felt when I saw movies like Uncut Gems, where it's got a lot of tension. Paul Thomas Anderson really does a great job here of building suspense and tension and making you kind of wonder, okay, where is this story going next? And that, I felt that throughout the entire run of the movie. I'm sitting here in my head thinking through the movie, maybe trying to figure out where it's going, and things sort of take a twist and a turn, and you just don't really know how things are going to end up. And that makes it a very suspenseful film, which is, again, that's why I don't want to tell you too much about the movie. So he plays this erratic protagonist that you're frustrated with him, but unlike Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems, this character is much more likable and you are rooting for him. Then you've got on the other side the lead antagonist, which is Sean Penn. He plays Stephen J. Lockjaw. So this character, first of all, I got to give it up to Sean Penn. I did not even know it was him. I'm watching this movie. I'm seeing this character. I see an actor, obviously, right? But my brain did not put together that it's Sean Penn. And I've seen Sean Penn in a bunch of movies. But it was Sean Penn. I had to go home and look at the IMDb and see that it was Sean Penn that played, Lockjaw. And I was flabbergasted because it doesn't even look like Sean Penn. I'm sure next time I see the movie, oh yeah, it is Sean Penn. But man, what a chameleon he was here. And not just because of the way he looks, but also the performance. Sean Penn is very unlikable as Colonel Lockjaw. I mean, this is a bad guy, and his intentions in the film, like, really are just, it's so foul, the stuff that this guy does and what he wants to do and what his mission is. And he is such a slimeball. I mean, very unlikable. What tends to happen with these movies is that the villains, even the ones who are just foul and just evil, have like a sense of coolness to them, right? They have like a sense of, okay, that's a great villain. I'll remember that guy. But, this movie really doesn't have that much, it doesn't have all that much comedy in it. I think that DiCaprio, when he's, screaming at really himself, even though he's screaming at a guy on the phone because he forgot a password to gain access to a location that he should have remembered, he plays it up. He has these crash outs, these meltdowns, kind of reminded me of what he did in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, kind of similar there. But the movie isn't really played up for like a dark comedy like a lot of Tarantino films are. It stays on the track of being a thriller. Now, besides DiCaprio and Penn, there's another character who's actually like the MacGuffin centerpiece of the film, who has sort of a coming of age type of story arc, where at the beginning, the character doesn't really know much about what's going on. There's a backstory that the audience knows, but this character doesn't. And then as the film progresses, they start to find out more and more about what's going on. And it ends up, by the end of the film, sort of being a complete U-turn of who the person was based on their experiences and based on the trauma of what this story put them through. That's why I say it's a coming-of-age story. Now, the film really focuses on the characters. You know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, but be aware that there are some politics in this film. And I don't mean like personal politics, as people say on here, the woke. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I mean. The foundation of this story is about an anti-fascist group going against this, paramilitary, I guess you could say just bureaucratic, the army, essentially, right? And I know some people might feel a certain type of way about it. I don't think this movie was leaning in a particular direction politically. I think it's just a story they wanted to tell, but I'm sure some people will pull from it things like that. Ultimately, one character doing one thing on one side and another character doing another on the other side is not reflective of every person in the military or every rebel, every revolutionary. Also, besides who I've already named, Sean Penn, DiCaprio, Benicio DelToro is in this film, and he's awesome. He plays a martial arts instructor who's got like his fingers in some things that are a bit interesting. Look, I'm just going to say it. Look, this movie came out at a very interesting time because there are things going on now in the world and that have gone on this year. I don't know if Paul Thomas Anderson planned it this way or not. I would assume he didn't. But there are things going on this year that reflect what's going on in the film. Right? There's certain things in the real world, that is to say, and you'll know what it is when you see it. I'm trying to be vague, but I think you will pick up on it. Also, I also want to talk about the music in this movie. Johnny Greenwood does the soundtrack, and like a lot of PTA movies, the music is used interestingly here, where a lot of times I felt like the music sort of overstays its welcome, but it's done on purpose. Like, you'll hear these sort of piano keys that represent sort of this like a mental anguish or a mental breakdown, and then you'll hear another like set of instruments that maybe play to elicit a response in you, but the response it's going to get from you is more so curiosity. Yeah, this is one that needs to be seen. It is a very, very good film, good characters, and I think people that like action thrillers, thought provoking, and in some ways, you know, there's some family drama in this movie as well. You know, it's another Paul Thomas Anderson, you know, movie to add to his long list of classics. So I do give it a thumbs up. Go check it out. And I mean, if you want to wait for streaming, maybe. But I liked watching it in the theater because the surround sound did elevate, I think, a lot of the scenes. So that's my review for Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another. Thumbs up. And I will catch you guys later on this week.